Hey there, welcome to the Jewish Adulting Podcast. Thank you for joining me today on your adulting journey. Before we get started, can you do me a quick favor? Can you hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to this? I promise it's not a lifetime commitment, but when you don't subscribe, it's kind of like coffee without caffeine. What are we even doing here? Or like latkes without applesauce. Are we even living our best life? When you subscribe, you not only give me warm, fuzzy feelings, but you're also helping me bring amazing guests who rely on subscriber counts to know whether joining me is a worthy endeavor. More subscribers mean more epic conversations for you. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, you can also show your support by becoming a monthly supporter at buymeacoffee.com/Jewish adulting. Whether it's $1, $5, $10, or even $20, every little bit helps make this podcast rolling. Of course, if you're sitting on a cool million or even looking to sponsor the show, reach out to me at jewishadulting@gmail.com. Also, I'm always looking out for engaging, thoughtful, passionate guests to join me. So if you want to nominate someone or want to come on the podcast yourself, reach out. Let's make a podcast shidduch.
This is Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer of the Shmuz.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.
Hello, everybody. This is Chedva Rose, your host for Jewish Adulting Podcast. I am here today with Faige Katz, and she is the founder of Career 360. Now, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try it for the next few podcasts, see how it goes. But people were telling me that they didn't really like that I gave a whole introduction for the person. They wanted to hear it straight from the person. So we're going to do something a little different today. So Faige, if you could tell the audience a little bit about what you do and also how you got into this, why you decided to do this, and then we'll talk about the topic.
Thank you, Chedva. Thank you for let me have this opportunity to speak. Thank you. So I've run Career 360. I do career testing and career counseling. And the reason why I'm doing this now is because for over 12 years, I was writing resumes for really thousands, I think for sure over 1,000 resumes for people. And as I was writing resumes, I was always so interested how people got into different fields. Once I was kind of the expert on so many different fields, I met with people from all ends of all industries, all levels. I really got good knowledge and information. And a lot of people started asking me oh, so what should my daughter go into? Or what should my son, what's a good field these days? And I started that was beginning of how do people know what they should go into? And how do people know what fields would be right for them? They have to make money. They have to do something that they'll be good at. What's the equation that goes into? Of course, as someone in our community, we're in high school. We go through high school, we go through elementary, high school, or the yeshiva system, and there's very little guidance about what to do after. Perhaps in the public school systems, or maybe through, let's say, the 4-year college system that people go through over those years, it happens more organically. People are guided towards different things, but in our community, it's more like you go through high school, you go through the yeshiva system, whatever it is, seminary, and then you're left with what next. And there's not a lot of guidance. So I felt there was a piece missing, and I was very happy to fill that need.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to post your information on how people could reach out to you in the podcast notes. You have a website, career360.net, and people could inquire about getting your services. So I think that you're mentioning an interesting issue, which is the lack of guidance in the yeshiva system for how the future is, how to prepare for the future as an adult in a career, making money, parnasa. When we talk about parnasa, do you find that you have to convince anybody that parnasa and working is part of our hishtadlus? Do you find that there is that conversation that seems kind of, simple? We know from Adam and Chava, like Adam had to toil for his bread, right? That was part of the chait. That was the thing that we have to now they have to toil for it. And now we're having sort of this reverse thing where people don't want to go into working, but then there's the reality on the ground. Like, do you have that this conversation about Parnassa comes up a lot?
Good question. It does come up, I will say. There are people not, I have to say, it doesn't come up that often. By the time people get to me, they're usually at the point where they know they need to do something, either from their wife or their spouse, of whichever one or the other, or from their Rav. Like someone will bring it to their attention that they do need to provide for their family in one way or the other, either the wife or the husband, and they come to me because it's at a situation where they're already at that point where they know they need to pay their bills and they don't want to take handouts.
Right. And when do you think would be a good opportunity? When do you think would be the right time to have this conversation with our young people? Okay. Well, I'm going to ask the next question, and I'm going to preface it with a very famous joke. Everyone knows this joke. Stop me if you have heard. Well, don't stop me. I'm going to say it anyway. The famous joke where there's a chassan and kala, and they're meeting. The other side. The chassan is meeting the kala's family, and the husband sits down with the future son-in-law, and they're talking. And he says, "How are you going to provide for the family?" And he says, "Hashem will provide." And he says, "Well, what are you going to do about, paying for tuition? Hashem will provide. How are you going to support yourself in learning? Hashem will provide." So afterwards, the wife says, "Nu, what do you think of the son-in-law?" He goes, "He's very nice, but he thinks I'm Hashem." So that sort of it's a famous joke, I'm sure. But that really leads to the question of bitachon, right? And I guess a lot of people sort of have this idea that if you have bitachon, then it will all work out the way it needs to work out. But then again, there's the concept of hishtadlus. So there is a line here between hishtadlus and bitachon. Now, what I want to ask is, how long have you been doing this, Faige?
Okay, the career testing and counseling has been 5 years, and before that, 12 and a half years doing resumes and career development workshops.
Right. So you're doing it about 17 plus years.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining that there's been a shift, the whole issue of like a learning boy going into the workforce. I remember that if you were a learning boy, you were a very specific kind of boy. And if you were a learning boy, if you were a learning boy, you're a specific kind. And if you're a working boy, you were a specific kind, and neither the twain shall meet. Like there wasn't a lot of crossover there. It was like very much differentiated by whether you went into a career or not. And now I think because of the necessity of the two-family income, inflation, just the cost of living and being Jewish in America and the world over, that there is a need for good learning boys to also be in the workforce. And that probably, I'm asking a question, is that come up a lot for you? And how do you navigate people who are hesitant to be in the workforce, or are hesitant to put a lot of hishtadlus into it because they're relying on some sort of, divine intervention? I don't know, for lack of asking, really. I don't.
Right. So I feel like there's a few questions in your question that you put into one. I'm just going to try to separate it. Are you asking the question about like the people who are like sitting and learning, and they have to get eventually have to make their own parnasa? Or are you asking a question about?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. One, yes, you're right. I did put a few questions into one question. I do have a habit of doing that. I'm working on it. One question is, how has the tide turned, or the messaging around, learning boys going into the workforce changed? And then how have, the learning boys, how have they worked within the framework of Das Torah and everything like that to make sure that they can have a parnasa for their family? So that's one part of it.
Okay, so there is I guess it is case specific. It's very case specific. So I'm not exactly sure how you want me to like deal with it like on a general
Mm-hmm.
way.
What do you mean by it's case specific? Because I think there's the reason that I think the reason that I'm going to argue that it's a general question is that there was a time where you wouldn't a learning boy wouldn't even think about going into the workforce. A learning boy would be like, I'm going to be in learning and I'm going to be in Kollel, I'm going to be in Clay Kodesh, and because this is what I want. And that was laudable and respectable, and that was very nice. But then there became sort of a greater need than could withstand that sort of, as many boys as wanted to go into Clay Kodesh, like people needed to start making real panasa. That
Right,
it
right, right.
wasn't enough for the mother to be a secretary and support her husband in learning. Like that became not enough. So I'm saying that there has been like a shift, and you correct me if I'm wrong, where it became more necessary for boys who would otherwise not have
Right.
gone into the workforce to go into the workforce. And how do you, what have you seen in terms of
Yeah,
Dastor helping people doing that shift and maintaining, and
right.
what kind of
Right.
obstacles, if any, come around, with that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that I understand that. Yeah, I definitely do meet with people who have been learning in Kollel and their wives were thinking they're going to be in Kollel and Clay Kodesh for many years, and things do change. Reality does hit, right, Chadva? Like
Right.
eventually things your family needs things. You need to pay rent. I mean, there's tuition, there's food bills, there's just so much clothes, and at a certain point it works for some people to stay. And I know it's a very, like you said, it's laudable and commendable people who can do that lifestyle where they just are the father is able to stay in learning and they live a very simple life. It's beautiful. And there are some people who say, well, I've been learning for many years and it's time for me for many reasons to go out. And the challenges that would come up, yeah, we're talking about someone who's probably already past the place where they have the time, money, and like the time, money, and the ability to invest in a lot of education. Let's just say someone wants to do
Mm-hmm.
medical school when they're 30, it's going to obviously be much more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So their options are going to be more limited.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might want to stay in Clay Kodesh, which, by the way, is also limited. It's not that there's so many jobs in Clay Kodesh. So yeah, so it's if they want to make parnasa, we have to really work together. We work together. And also, I always will mention to people in that situation, they need to speak with a rav or a
Mm-hmm.
mentor that they have from yeshiva or from their community. It's very important. But I see a lot of people who are living beautiful Yiddish from lives, learning chavrusas morning and night, wanting to provide for their family. Yes, it is a shift. Yes, there are many, many, many people like that. Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my father is a I'm from like a little bit of an old school. He was a doctor all his life, his professional life, and he's retired now. But he sat and learned very much. And he spoke to his Rav when he was about 19. He was getting married around 19 or 20, whatever it was. And he says to his Rav, "Should I take off a year after I got married to go learn in Kollel and learn before take off a year of college and medical school?" And this Rav looks at him like this. He says, he's from the old country, like from Poland. This Rav, he says to him, "What? Take off a year to sit and learn? You have to learn all your life. What is this? Learn for 1 year? Come on. Learning is
Right.
all your life. And if we can have a situation where there's learning and there's providing for your family and it's respectable in this respectable way, then I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I don't push people into the workforce who should be in learning or in Clay Kodesh. God forbid. No, I don't do that. But if people come to me and they want to provide for the family, I will definitely help them and give them the support they need to do it.
Right. So do you get a lot of parents encouraging their kids because they're nervous and the kids are like, I'm not interested? Do you get that?
Okay, good question. I don't push anything on anyone personally. So if a parent comes to me saying their kids aren't interested, can you make them be interested? I can't do that. That's beyond what I need buy-in. So even when I work with people and we come up with a certain specific direction, let's just say, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw some, let's say someone should go into be an accountant, right? If I don't see that that person wants to do it, or if they don't have, like, if they don't, just because I think it's a great idea for them because at ABCD, you know, EFG, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is a great field too. If they're not interested, I can't push it. That's not my job. My job is to help people with where they're at and bring it forward so that I could, it's their, ultimately their life, their reality, and it has to come from inside them. So
Right.
yeah, that's like, I'm not like that type of career coach that says, this is what you gotta do. And, you know, I don't care what you want, but this is what you gotta do. That's not my style.
Right. So it happens to be that I have a list of questions, and this conversation has already led me into like a different avenue. There's the career market right now is challenging, and generation is different. This generation is different than previous generation in terms of, used to be people would go into a career, they would go in the career and they would die in their career. And it was like, this is my job.
Right.
I work for the dignity of the paycheck. I don't have to love everything about it. I don't have to love every person in the organization. This is my job, right? And
Right.
now we have a lot of transition and building
Right.
skills and people, I don't want to get into like generation bashing, but it's a whole different way of looking at the workforce and careers and stability.
Yes.
And
Correct.
how has that impacted your ability to be helpful to people
Yes.
when they say, I only want to do something I absolutely love. I never
Right.
want to work a day in my life because I love everything I do. How do you address that?
Yeah, this is a problem. I do deal with this a lot, actually. So you're hitting on something good. There's something important. But I sometimes I come home from work and I say like my job is just telling people that they actually they have to actually work hard and do things that they might not want to do every day just because that's what they have to do. And it's like almost counterintuitive because we're coming to a career counselor who's supposed to help them. But
Right.
really this whole business of like, okay, I have to only work in things that are going to make six figures doing very little work. And yeah, that I for a time I was getting that a lot. Like it was like almost every day that I was meeting people who were telling me those kinds of like, it's really Nourishkeit, I'm sorry. And
Mhm.
my job was to just like set them straight. Like,
Right.
okay, you start at the beginning, you get jobs that you don't like. You do things that you don't like doing. Why? Because you're getting experience. Uh,
Right.
you're getting a paycheck. You're just getting experience like being in the professional corporate world. Like you don't have to be doing the job that you're going to be doing forever and loving it. Like you will get to that point, but you're not supposed to be there yet, and that's okay.
Right.
Uh,
So where did people get this, like, I want to say lie? Maybe that's a little harsh, but where did people get this story that they could only do something that they absolutely love? Like where do you think that came from?
okay, so it's definitely in the world as a culture.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, that's what we're fighting. There's no question it's coming from the outside in. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that is the way people are thinking. I don't know why it is that way, but it is that way. I'm not going to like try to figure all that out. That's
Right,
not
right.
important, but that is a very prevalent philosophy. Like, why would I work if I don't love doing it? I'm like, hello, like you don't have any skills right now. You don't
Right.
have any income. You're going to take a job. And so it's so funny because I worry, just to be fair, like my job as a career counselor is yes. What do you love doing? What are you talented in? What are your strengths? What's your personal style lend itself to? I
Mhm.
want that to be part of your day because when we have talents and strengths and interests, I would love for that to be in your job. Like that's what I do. That's like yes, like let's find that. But you're not gonna. It takes time. The time that it takes to build what you're going to be doing or going to be like self-actualized in every which way is not going to be on day one when you're just trying to get experience and have an income and have something put on your resume. Like let's and I what I would hope for these people and for the people that are thinking that they have to only work at six figures, getting with six figures and doing things that they love, and that's really not reality. Like what I do with them is like, okay, what would be that ideal job? Like what would that look like? Let's talk about it and let's go backwards. What do you have to do to get to that place?
Right.
What's the entry level? What's the beginning? It's not going to be there yet, but you will get there. So I share that with them.
Right. I'm just thinking that a lot of our Gedolim worked. Right now, it's pretty common for a Rav to be a Rav. There are a few big Rebbeim. I can't really think of very many, but I know in the past, Chafetz Chaim worked, Rambam works. There were a lot of like that was pretty normal Parnasa. Have you ever had to get like a rabbi involved with somebody? I mean, I don't, because again, you're saying like your job is not to convince anybody of anything, but have you ever needed to get a Rav involved in any of your cases or any of the people that you've worked with?
Good question. I've definitely worked with Rabbanim. The question is, that they have to like get actively involved?
Mm-hmm. How do you work with Rabbanim? What role do they play?
The role they play is they would send me people who are at the place that they are reaching out to the Rav, and they're saying they need help, and then the Rav would then recommend them to speak with me, and then I would help them, and then that's really where my involvement ends with the Rav. Like
right.
they direct them to me, and yeah, that's how it is.
Okay.
That's how it works.
So tell me about how you help people identify this. How do you help people identify what they might be good at? Like, what is your process? Without giving away the whole kit and caboodle, what is approximately the take me through if I call you up and I say, I'm at this point, I'm at this turning point. I can't figure out what I want to do. I'm good at everything, and what is your process?
What is the process? Yeah, so that is a very good question as well. So what's the process of like, okay, so it's understanding all the moving parts. Okay, the moving parts are, yes, it's not, okay, the moving parts, let me say what they're not. They're not what your parents want you to do, and they're not what your friends are doing, and you're not what you're doing, they're doing just because it's easy. That's not the moving parts, okay? So we kind of like take all that like outside information and take it out of the picture. What's in the picture that we need to what do we have to understand in order to help make an individual make a decision about what to do next, okay? So they're coming to me, they don't know. Should they do social work? Should they become a lawyer? Should they become a teacher? Should they become an accountant? Should they go for medical school? Should they go for graphic design, interior design? Like they don't know where to start, right? There's options. Right. Thank God now we have options. The options are there, right? So how do we figure it out? And there's no way to do this en masse. So like sometimes I speak in to a group of people. I'm like, I can't tell, people can't walk away from anyone who's going to say, come to my speech and you will know at the end exactly what you should do with the rest of your life. It's not possible. Right. Why? Because it's so individual, and the parts are, number one, a person's talents. Number two, and we have a way to assess those. The talents I'm talking about are not talents that they know how to dance or sing or whatever, or draw. The talents I'm talking about are a person's problem-solving style, their communication style, their leadership style, working with people, on top of people, below people, next to people, their spatial reasoning, their creativity, the things that are important to understand their person's talents, number one. Number two is their interests. Okay, interests are huge, meaning sometimes people are talented in something, but they're not interested in using it. It happens. Some people are interested in things, but they don't have talents in them. It happens all the time. Okay, so we bring that out. Okay, so if someone has a talent that they are very good with their hands, okay, I can pick up on that. But sometimes people don't want to work with their hands. They say, nah, I don't really care about that, but they're talented in it. Okay, so I'm like, well, you have these talents, you're not interested in it. Okay, we understand it. Number three, their value system is huge. Okay, do they want to work remote only? I get people, I only want to work remote. Don't give me a job if I can't do it remote. Don't tell me about anything or don't give me a job if I have to go to school, because I don't value going to school. All right, so we work with that. That person's value system, how much money they want to make also. I want to be rich. I don't care, I just want to pay the bills. That's a person's value system. Okay. We also talk about their personality, their personal style. Again, working alongside people, above people, with how much do they have to work with people? All right. So that's
Mhm.
a piece of it. And yeah, they're
Yeah.
those are the things that we have, their goals, also their family of origin comes into play. Like what messaging do they have from their family that's coming to that's coming out. So all these things, we are understanding it, we're talking about it, and we're making it filtering it to what is right for them.
Right. So it almost sounds like career therapy.
It's
Uh,
career. You know what it is? It's a journey of self-discovery. Yes,
uh,
yeah, it really
uh,
is.
right. How much time do you spend on average with each of your clients?
The time I spend with them is it's an hour and a half for the initial review of the reports that are generated based on the testing. The testing is not done by themselves, like at home or at a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then we review it for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and they have access to reports. So they get to read through the reports and then come back about a week later, and we review it and wrap it up with a bow and make sure they're on their way. And at that point, it's incredible, but once you have all that information, like it's just becomes so natural and clear what to do next. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not like I'm the one who's saying like, oh, you need to, like I said, like I'm not telling someone you need to go to become an accountant. Like I don't say that to people, but
Right.
through the work what we uncover together, it's like it becomes obvious to both me, myself, and the client. Like, oh, wow, now I know what I have to do because of what all this information that we have now, it leads us to the right decision. It becomes obvious and clear.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right. Right. Okay. Um, what would you say about people who want to transition out of careers? They've been in one career for a very long time.
right.
Um, and I've actually I've encountered these people. I think I was looking at a nursing home for my mother-in-law, and the woman who was doing the tours and giving the whole thing, the administrator, she was she was like, "Oh, I used to be an attorney." And I'm like, how did that transition go? What is the biggest obstacle or that people face when they want to do a career change?
It's funny that you said she was an attorney because there are a lot of attorneys who transition out of being a lawyer. It is funny. I think it's like the type of thing like, oh yeah, I'll go be a lawyer. Like
Yeah.
that sounds great. I have good marks. I could do it. I'll pass the bar. And then the actual job, they're like, this is just not right for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
it does happen a lot for lawyers. In fact, there's a special thing for that we have that's special for lawyers transitioning. But
That's interesting.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, so specifically for that field. But in any case, anyone who is interested in transitioning, what would I do with them? So for sure, I would give them the test because I wouldn't have to make a change like that. You got to be very comfortable. Also, you have to be financially comfortable. Not everyone has that flexibility to just switch out of
Yeah.
one field and go to the other.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do with people who want to transition, and if at all possible, I try to help them leverage what they have already and move it forward into something that's more meaningful to them versus start somewhere at the bottom. I mean, I met with people who are in like mid-career, and mid-career, like when someone's between the ages of 38 and 45 is actually mid-career. And a lot of people have this like, oh shucks, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. That's
Right.
very formal. It's funny. Like that when people come to me like, is this normal? Like, yes. How old are you? You're 41? Totally makes sense. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
this is the time when people start thinking about these things. And I hesitate to say to someone who's let's say let's say a social worker who wants to go into finance, a complete change. I'm like, do you know you're going to be starting at the bottom? You
Mm-hmm.
need to go to school. You need to get entry level jobs. You're going to be competing with younger people who are like, it's like you need to understand that switching out of something that you've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years. And yeah, I try to help them move it without completely changing. I know there's a whole thing like transition. I would rather pivot with what they already have and move it to something more meaningful. Like, so let's say, for instance, social work. Okay, you don't like doing one-on-one counseling. Okay, so could we pivot you to doing social work, case management, or in a nonprofit doing program development? Like, let's move
Mm-hmm.
it with your what you already have and
Mhm.
figure out how to take it to a place that's more meaningful. That's what
Right.
I personally
Right.
do. I don't know if
Right.
that's just my own experience and my own style.
Okay. So you must be on top of like the industry trends for different jobs. Like what are up and coming jobs that are there's going to need to be a lot of, people for, which jobs are no longer popular. It used to be everybody was in speech and OT and PT. If that is that still a need? Like we must be on top of these
Yes.
trends.
Yes.
How do you keep on top of that trend of the trends?
Good question. Many different ways. Many. I hear firsthand from people. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I try to stay on top of like the news, especially
Mm-hmm.
in these areas for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I go to some like industry meetings. I'll sit in on, or I'll listen to and hear what they're saying as well. So definitely through the news, but the main source of information I have is from the government websites that show us which careers are trending. Yes, there have people, there's economists, there's statisticians who sit there and analyze what
Mm-hmm.
fields are going to be popular in the future and which fields are going away.
Right.
So there's articles like the Wall Street Journal, of course. I mean, there's our last recently there was about, why no one wants to be an accountant. The blue collar professions are coming back as the greatest next thing. Like I'll
Right.
read those articles, I'll see what it's all about. Of course, the technology sector right now is much more competitive and more difficult to break into than it was 10 years ago, right? Or 5 years, or even 2 years ago. Like AI took over like a lot of things. How does that affect things? We have to just keep on top of it. And I have the resources. I know where to go to find if someone has an obscure field that I don't even know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
I have the resources to find that out through the government and through also just another really cool way of finding out is seriously just Googling. Like, let's just say someone wants to be an engineer, right? Like I don't know, something random like a wastewater management engineer. Like it's such a thing, I know it sounds crazy, but like a random thing. You actually type it into the Google search and go through how many jobs are out there in your location that are available. Like you could actually see it. Like it's not so hard.
Right. Right. Do you think that have you experienced like a lot of people who come to you because and are worried about the workforce in terms of how it's going to impact them, like hushkafically, entering the workforce? It's, I know from personal experience, like I worked for many years with Jewish agencies. And then sometimes I worked for Jewish agencies that had not from people or not religious people or not Jewish people. And I found that I was exposed to a lot more things that I, as a base Yaakov girl, um, did not, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't appreciate it. And to this day, I'm still trying to make boundaries even within my own workplace. Have you found a lot of people being nervous about that aspect of it, of the Jewish values and traditions and how they are going to be impacted in a workforce?
It's tricky. Are you still working in a Jewish agency or not?
I'm working in a Jewish company, but they have not Jewish employees. And so like nivel pet is a big problem. And I'm kind of like, please don't use those words. Um, you know, uh, and there's other things, but I would say that's for me like the biggest challenge in my work
Yeah,
environment.
I hear it. I
People
hear
come
that.
to you concerned. Do people come to you concerned about that? How do you?
That. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm more work with people who haven't entered the actual working world yet. So, but what I always do I will send them to people in the field. And it's funny because I recently asked someone to speak to, there was a nurse that I reached out to who I asked to speak to one of my clients who was interested in becoming a nurse. And I just was having a conversation before she spoke to my client. She was just telling me that, by the way, where I work, I guess she's in, I don't know which hospital she's in, but she's like, the place that I work, I'm just letting you know, it's the language is, I'm working with people and the language is horrible.
Right.
And like, so it's, a nurse is such a nice Jewish profession. You're helping
Yeah.
people, you're You could do maybe shift work. You could work for an insurance company later on. Like it has so
Okay.
much positive to it. And then
Right.
there's also the negative, right? So we live in a
Right.
very insular community, as you know, and it's so beautiful. But yeah, going out to that real world is such a culture shock for us.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the things that I would bring up as like the biggest, yeah, like there's the language, there's precis, there's uh
Right.
working with, between men and women. Those are
Yes.
issues. Nowadays, social media is very, very, very challenging. That's like a whole new field. That's like a whole new like can of worms to deal with because yeah, that's a big part of a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Or like well in a certain field, not a lot, not every job has it, but like it's becoming more and more of a problem for
I
people
mean,
who
you
want
could even say
that.
that, like, someone said to me, they're in Shidduchim and they're looking for, a guy who's going to learn, who's going to be kovei itim, who, might learn when they first get married. But eventually, like, parnas is going to be a thing, and that they would need to provide. And they said, oh, I guess they'll have to use their smartphone for work. And I said, I don't know. Is that like, that probably comes up a lot too. Like, I want to work, but I can't have a smartphone. Is that going to impact my ability to have a job? Have you found that is a barrier for
No.
from people? No.
No, not really the smartphone. That never came up in my work with people, but the social media piece did a lot.
No.
Also, like a
Interesting.
lot of fields now, even something as also like as as innocent as like social work, like nowadays the societal ills are a whole lot worse than they were even 10 years ago. So so people who are would maybe want that kind of profession are staying away or saying to me, well, there it's really not gonna it's really a problem. My Rav said not to go into. I'm getting that. So it's
Right.
there's new things up that are coming up that I
I mean,
think
there's so many professions that are like that are anti religion or don't lend itself to boundaries, like proper, like
right,
hashkafic and halachic boundaries,
right,
um, that probably limits certain people's ability. I mean, I feel the same way. I have a son who doesn't like really come to us to like family events, things like Hershey Park or go karting or whatever for Shmir Sinai issues.
wow,
He's
very
Baruch
special.
Hashem, he's very special, and I worry about him because he's putting Gedarim up. He's being very careful, and I think to myself, and oftentimes when I am at Hershey Park or go karting or wherever, and I see pretzas and the language that people are speaking out loud and the music that they're playing, I think, oh, thank goodness my yeshiva bacher isn't here, right? Because yeah, what he would have been exposed to just going go karting or just going to
Right.
Hershey Park, like that is a real challenge.
Mm.
With I didn't send him to well, I won't say where, but there's some place that he was gonna go visit a family member in a place that is known for pizzas, and he didn't go visit that person. That person is dying, and you know, it's like in the same way. Like I want him to be able to have a parnasa for his family, but I think there's a lot of more limitations than people realize if you're really being careful about your
Right.
hashkafak and halachic views.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't have any answers for that. I just know that it's a concern.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid that, really. And I will say that if he works in like a firm environment, he'll avoid it all. But I hate to break news to you, it's not necessarily so, because there's still the issues with men and women. And by the way, that's an issue. I just want to bring it to everyone's attention. But that is an issue as well. That when you work with people, okay, working in a team, and there's men and women, and even in the most purest environments, like and there's interaction between men and women, and that's an issue as well. So again, just
Right.
bring it up as something to take into consideration and to prepare ourselves. I feel like there could be chadva between me and you, like, and everyone who's listening. I would love for there to be more preparation, because people really we're all just thrown out there into the world, and we have to figure it out. And I would love to. I mean, I know some places are trying. I think Wits is trying to do their part and have like a lecture for the girls, women in the workplace, a hashkafic part of it. It's beautiful. I think we need a lot of that. A lot of that for we all need that.
Iggy, now we know what your nonprofit organization that you're going to start is going to be about. You're going to do education in the Jewish day schools for, getting Parnassa and doing it al pi Torah and our Rabbanim. I just think you found yourself a project.
I would love to do that. That would be very nice for me. I really also just regular career counseling, but yeah, that's a special piece of it as well. Sure.
Okay. All right, let's do it. We'll have to get back to that. So let me think. I just want to make sure that I'm mindful of your time. I see that we've been talking for a bit now.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, do you have any stories, like either success or a failure story where you tried to help someone and it worked out beautifully, or you tried to help someone and it didn't work out beautifully, and why that is? Do you have any stories or anecdotes you could share with us?
I mean, I have a bunch, but I'm just trying to think the one that would be most impactful for you and for everyone. Okay, this is my favorite one. I don't know if it's like my most successful one, but it's definitely a favorite. I worked with someone out of like someone online. It was not in our community. And I met with him over Zoom, and he did the testing, and I was having a hard time with him because he didn't have like a lot of like things I could work with, and I was like trying to help him figure out what to do, and what he would be interested in. He really needed help. Like he was a 21-year-old boy who needed to work. Like that was his mandate, and he had to support himself. And I was looking at everything, and he had a special talent that I picked up on, that he was able to pick up on very like fine details and pick up on mistakes, things that are like, this was his talent that showed up. And I said to him, well, how about you be a mashgiach? And he says to me, I always wanted to be a mashgiach. I know it's like, and I said, okay, so let's do it. And I helped him apply for the place that offers a mashgiach program in his community. And then I happened to have been visiting that community this past year. And this was a couple of years ago. I worked with him probably 2 years ago or so. And then I happened to be in his community for a couple of days, and we went to check out a certain restaurant. We didn't want to sit down and eat there, but we were just schmoozing with the people behind the counter, finding out it was a new restaurant, just finding out of it. And they were non-Jewish people behind the counter, but it was a kosher place. So he looks at, and he's showing us what the menu is. And then he says to us, and we even have a rabbi. And he turns to the guy, the mashgiach, his rabbi, right? And he said, this is our rabbi. And I look up and I see the client that I met with on Zoom. He was being a mashgiach in that restaurant. And I was just like, of course, I couldn't say anything to him because like I do follow HIPAA rules, even though I don't sign HIPAA or anything like that. But I'm very like, I work with people. I don't pretend I don't know them when I see them. But yeah, so he was working as a mashgiach in a nice, very fine restaurant when I met with him, when I saw him then. That's just that was really nice.
What I like about that story is that my father always says, it's from this program called Recovery International, just because he'll yell at me if I don't credit. There's a saying that we work for the dignity of the paycheck. And it's not like you didn't get, your story isn't about somebody who became the next president of the United States. It's about someone who found the thing that they wanted to do that could provide a parnassa for them, that with a skill set that they had. And I like that story.
Thank you. Yeah, but I have many. I meet people and they say, "You worked with my son a few years ago. You worked with my daughter," and then now they're in the right track, and it makes me feel really good. Yeah. Just what did it? If you have a minute, I'll share with you a situation that did. I don't want to say it wasn't a failure, but it was like a reality check that like sometimes I am so limited in what I can do, even though I show people the right thing. Ultimately, it's up to them. That's sometimes what happens as well. Like I work with people and we come to a good place and this is what you got to do next. And then they'll be like, well, I want to make more money, or, well, my parents said I can't do that. And I'm like, and then they do the wrong thing, and then I meet them a few years later, and they're like it's a zero. Like I try, like we
Right.
like I the work I do with people is it's valuable, but it has to be used properly. And I can't, I can't push anything on anyone, but I hope that when we work together, it's very clear to people what they have to do. And when they fight that, or when they go against what they know what's right for them,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, like you have all these questions about Hashem. That's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to use what we have, with our talents, with our abilities, with our interests, with our personality, with the reality that we have. We don't have to fight it. We have to embrace it, and we have to use it. And I think that's what I think. I get this. It's really, this is all in the Chovos Halavavos and the Shara B'Tachon. This is straight out. I just want to let you know. I'm not making this up. It's
Mm-hmm.
not my hashkafa. It's hashkafa of the Chovos Halavavos. Like, Hashem makes people with certain techunos so that they should use it and bring it out versus squash it and say, I want to make more money. Or listen, if people have to make more money, I work with that. It's not like I can't work with that, but like you have to know that you are the way you are for a reason. And it's a good thing that you're that way. Everyone has their own space in the world to do what they need to do to make the world complete. And it's okay that it's different than what you had in mind or what your parents had in mind.
Right. Well, there's probably a really it's probably, in a way, again I'm referencing like as if you were a therapist, because it feels a little bit like that. If you give advice to your client and they don't follow your advice and that ends up not working out for them, I could see that being frustrating for you, because you spend all this time, all this effort, you're coaching them, and then they decide that they are going to go in a different direction. And that's not necessarily, maybe it works out for them, but maybe it doesn't work out for them. And you probably have to do some letting go. You can't change the outer environment. You could only hope to influence it, right? That you're doing the best that you can to give them what you know to be good and true and helpful. And if at the end of the day, they decide to go a different direction, that you sort of have to detach from that, right? Is that like,
yeah. That's what it is, but it doesn't happen very often. I will say, I'm just thinking about one time that happened, and it was very frustrating, actually. But I don't think it happened any other times. Usually, it's people follow because I said I don't push people into anything. It makes it clear that what they have to do. So that's why I feel I'm very confident about my testing that I do, the Highlands Ability Battery. I feel very confident with using it, and with all the work I do with people, I know that it comes to a place of truth, of what's right for them. It's nothing to do with me, about them.
Right. So would you say the biggest obstacle towards people being successful is like they're not being able to spot their own limitations, like not being able to, like, getting in their own way? Would you say that?
First, I wouldn't say like as in a general. I would say that as more like not like specific. I would say I think the biggest obstacle probably would be like not being self-aware, maybe, or not having knowledge about the options. So there are so many options, and I just love sharing them with people, and showing them that it could work and how it could work. That's what I love doing.
Well, I definitely think you're fall into the category of, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right? Where you are giving them this, if you help them get a parnasa, and now for the rest of their lives, they have a paycheck, they're able to support themselves. Like, that is the ultimate in chesed. And you probably, I imagine that you love what you do, but it's also it's a really meaningful mission. And even though you do it for your parnasa, there's a lot to be said for the chesed ultimately that it is when you help people get a job, like,
thank you
in that way.
I sometimes forget about that, but yeah, thank you. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you, Chedva.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Like I said, I'm going to post your information with the episode notes, and anybody can be in touch with Faige if they want to utilize her service. I'm certainly going to sign up. I have a daughter who is kind of in between what she wants to do right now. And I'm like, I think she should go to Faige's. So I'm definitely going to be in touch with you about that. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chava.
Sure. Have a good night.
Same
Bye-bye.
to you. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Views expressed by me, your host, and my delightful guest are not necessarily reflective of each other's views, ideas, or life choices. Sometimes we're on the same page, and other times we're not.